Hello racers! Today we will be discussing the leaders and the meta from the upcoming tournaments. We gathered up a list of the most popular or the most attractive lists, and we will be placing them from S to D tier, where D is completed with leaders that we should think you shouldn't play if you want to win competitive tournaments. Okay, so let's go to the tier list.
Just one thing before we start, that those are just our early predictions. Like we are still early in the meta, and things might change.
Yeah, of course. There may be decks that will be broken that are not even mentioned here, or even some of the leaders that are on the bottom someone may make a list that will be incredibly strong. But from the list we saw, at least to this point, Kylo Ren, Boba, the new Boba, Cad Bane, Bo-Katan, Gar Saxon, Lando, Grand Inquisitor, and Thrawn don't really have a list that is competitive in our book. So you may win a local tournament with those leaders, but you don't have really a big chance of performing on a bigger scale. Okay, so let's go with the list. And first is double blue tree root. And this is the deck I was working on recently. I will definitely post a deck list for it in a few days or a few weeks. We'll see when it's finished. But the deck does one thing. It does one thing really well. It is extremely strong versus aggro. It has almost 90% win rate versus Sabine, Boba, and New Han or Tarkin. But on the other hand, it has about 90% lose rate versus any control. So it's a deck that, if you know your meta very well, you can bring to the tournament and have extremely good results. On the other hand, it's also the deck that can go 0-5 on the tournament if you just got a bad matchups.
So yeah, it's the type of deck that it's not as much about player, it's more about the matchup that you get, because
exactly. And so for me, it's like a B C tier deck. I think because he performs really well versus the strongest decks, I will put him in the B tier.
Yeah, I mean, for now we can put him on low B tier or high C tier. Like he's the reason why he is here is just because he's gonna counter the meta, because at the moment, from our predictions, we feel like the more aggressive decks are gonna be high on the list, so that's why he's here.
Yeah. Okay. So let's now talk about Tarkin. Tarkin yellow. So the list that I've created, and a few weeks later, it's still strong. It still has a good matchups to really everything. It's not the deck that is extremely well versatile to adapt. So I think it will be, for me at least, it's a really good deck, but it will not be an S tier deck, I think, ever. And I will put it in the low A tier.
Yeah, I mean, Tarkin is pretty good. Like, he's been doing pretty well against stuff like Han, which is pretty strong, and in general, he struggles against Yellow Boba, but to be honest, Yellow Boba is kind of overhyped at the moment, so you will see where he ends up in a few minutes, I guess.
I think A tier is a good place for him. You can definitely win even a big tournament playing Tarkin, but it will require a lot of games with him. It will require a lot of skill to do it.
I guess maybe now we can move on to the Yellow Boba. Since,
okay. We can talk about Yellow Boba.
Yellow.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So Yellow Boba during spoiler season was thought to be absolute powerhouse in the set, because he was pretty decent in first set, and he got a ton of good cards. So he was expected to be a S tier deck, and so far he's not that strong. And I feel like the main reason for that is because he doesn't really have any like great turn one plays. Like a lot of decks at this point have some sort of busted turn one play. Like Kira has Enforcer as a free to shield that. A lot of hero decks have a free units on the first round, And in general, like I feel like Boba just doesn't really have that many busted turn one plays, and I feel like that's what
Yeah,
holds him back.
for me, Boba just he does one thing really, really well. It's an extremely strong tempo deck, but you can adapt to his playstyle and you can counter it pretty effectively. Uh, it is also the deck that will not surprise you because whenever you play versus Boba, you will definitely know almost every single card that he will play. So at the moment, during the matchups that we tested, he performs good. It's a strong deck. You can win tournaments with him. Even right now in USA, the current tournaments are dominated a little bit by Yellow Boba, but I think it will change a lot, and I think it will end up as an 8-tier deck.
Yeah, I would say it's a high A tier,
Yeah.
just because you still can high roll with stuff like Cunning. Like Cunning is such a strong card that it can really carry this deck. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
Cunning,
don't think it's S tier.
Boba Fett, Fire Spray. They are still amazing cards. But the fact that you can really lose the game on the first turn is a really big thing with Boba. Okay, so now let's talk about Ramp Green Bossk.
Okay.
And this is the deck that I've underestimated a lot. I thought it will be like a C D tier deck. That was a little bit overhyped at the spoiler season. During testing, it was not performing the greatest. But then the list that Torque posted, the ramp one, performed much above what I expected, and I think it will definitely be part of the meta. It has a really strong early, mid, and late game. You still can counter it because bounties are upgrades, so any item upgrade removal is still really good versus this deck, and it can be stopped. And for that reason, I think it will be, for me at least, on the bottom of A tier.
Yeah, I mean he's in A tier for sure. I don't know if he's worse than Tarkin or better, but yeah, he is definitely strong with all the ramp stuff that he has.
I will put him below Tarkin just because of how hard it is to play. So Tarkin, you basically can pick up, play like 20 games, and you will be able to win. With Bossk, you will need a lot of practice to perform on the level that will allow you to win the tournament.
Yeah, agreed. Okay.
Okay, so now let's go with Iden Blue, so the deck that was really strong on set 1.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, was pretty decent. It was. I don't even. Would I don't even do. I would say it was more Vader, like in terms of hard control decks. Idon was really good at stopping aggro, so she was pretty strong at stopping stuff like Sabine in set one. In set two, as I've mentioned before, there's gonna be quite a few aggro decks, so she might end up high on the list, but I didn't really play that much against hard control so far, so it's really
Yeah.
hard to judge.
Uh,
So
I've
yeah,
played a little bit versus Iden Blue, and I think she will be an answer to the meta, but as a hard control deck, she didn't really got much. Even though like cards like Client or Pershing look really strong, the anti-control cards that we got in set 2 are much stronger. So I think hard control, and any control for that matter, that is mostly event based, is not that good. So I will personally put her in the C tier. I'm not really seeing her winning anything substantial in this set.
I mean, I would say that she's kind of next to Chirrut in my eyes, but yeah,
Yeah.
as I said, like it's quite hard to judge because hard control decks are like showing more towards the later stages of the meta, and
Yeah. So okay.
we are
So
still in the early stages. So
let's keep her next to Chirrut. And let's go with the hard control that I think will be the only one that has a potential to be strong. And I think we can grab both of the decks. Did I? Oh. Oh, okay. So let's keep Iden Blue and Boba. Okay, and Boba Blue, because this is basically the same deck. You mostly change up the leader and a little bit of the cards, but I think we can talk about them as one. So it's similar for Iden Blue, but Yellow got a lot of good answers, like Evacuate, like Frozen in Carbonite. But I think it's the same still with what I said before, that aggro and mid-range got such a powerful anti-control card that I don't really see hard control in the meta. So
Yeah, I mean,
even though they are strong decks, yeah. Sorry.
I mean, I mean, it's gonna be the same thing that I said before, because yeah, it's still hard to say how good they are gonna be, but like Boba has some good tools to also provide some tempo with armor and fire spray, so he's not that much oriented about playing hard control, but he's still decent. Like I would say those decks are gonna be pretty good. Yeah, that's the thing that I was going to suggest, that we should move down those two, the C tier, and keep.
Yeah, and for everybody, C tier decks, I think the decks that we got, all of those decks can be competitive. So being in the C tier doesn't mean that the deck is bad, but in our mind, it's just a deck that you can win a tournament with the deck. It's just, in our mind, it will not be performing consistently, and it will not perform to the level that we want a deck to do in a competitive sense.
Yeah, agreed. Also, we can bring Vader Blue because it's the last hard control deck I feel like we have on the list. So
and I think
Vader Blue is also in the same boat. Like, it's pretty good deck, but it's weaker than Iden Yellow and
yeah,
Blue
I will
Boba,
actually put him in C tier. I think he didn't really get much from set 1, and his main strength in set 1 was that the fact that if you put Vader on the board, it was almost unremovable. And with Wrecker, Poe, Rival's Fall, waiting to his deploy is a little bit weaker than it was. So I think he definitely got weaker from set 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
So let's now talk about the deck that is winning a lot the tournaments that is happening in the US. So double Cunning Han. I've actually didn't tested the deck before I saw that it won tournaments. But when we did the testing for the deck, it didn't really click for me. The deck can be really strong. It can have really explosive turns, but it's also extremely easy to lock him down. If you answer his big threats, or if you lock the ground early in the game, this deck doesn't really have a lot of ways to recover from it. So for me, it will be a bottom of A or a top of B tier at best.
Yep. So Yellow Han is basically a combination of the Green Han, the old Han, with DJ and Tech combo, and also the stuff that Mono Yellow Boba has, so Cunning and all of the mono cards that are pretty good. So he tries to do a little bit of both, but I don't think he is that strong overall. Like, but V tier sounds legit for him in my eyes.
I will say one thing: if you have a lot of experience with this Han, and your opponent doesn't have any experience playing against it, this deck may feel like it's just overpowered. It was similar thing with Tarkin, that whenever I tested Tarkin at the beginning, I almost never lost, when someone was playing this deck for the first time. But right now, when people adapt it and now know how to counter the deck, it feels much weaker. So that's why we are putting him in B tier, even though it's winning at the moment a lot. Okay, and let's now go with, I think, one of the strongest decks. So Green Sabine.
Yeah, Green Sabine. So Green Sabine is definitely a really strong deck in the meta. She got quite a few good tools like Wrecker, like Poe, Heroic Resolve, I guess Darksaber. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan, and Beton is not the biggest fan either, but neither. So Darksaber is an option, I guess, that you can run as a one-off maybe in Sabine, but she got a lot of good stuff. That is besides Darksaber, so Wrecker, Poe, and Heroic Resolve, also Ketsu, and I believe there is some good also.
I think the set that got the most
also
from the set
Cassian.
too.
Yeah,
Cassian is amazing. I think that the deck was really strong in set 1, even though it had some really glaring weaknesses. Like it had a terrible end game. It doesn't have any way to win if your opponent dominated the ground and has healing. And all of those were fixed in set 2. So for me, it's definitely S tier. It's one of the most most annoying decks to play around. It has counters. It's not a deck that will never lose, but I think because of how good win rate this deck has versus almost anything, and how easy it is to play, it's an easily S tier, and I don't think any of the decks we mentioned before really compares with her. Yeah, I think there is a really big gap between Sabine Green and, for example, Boba Yellow.
I'm not so sure about that, but maybe, I guess.
It's not like they are like Boba Yellow still can win with Sabine. I think that compared to how well she does versus almost any deck in the meta, I think she's one of the most consistent leaders at the moment. Okay, so let's now talk about Luke, the deck that a lot of people forget existed.
So yeah, Luke is one of those leaders that didn't seem that great in set 2, but there are a few cards that are pretty strong in him, namely Mass. So you can play Mass on turn 1 and give her a shield token, and basically Mass can grow each round and become a really powerhouse.
Yeah, also Villagers. So 3 mana to Sentinel Shielded is a really good unit to lock the ground. He still has access to all the annoying 1 mana units that will allow you to grow your mana. So 1/2 that allows you to play a unit for 1 cheaper. And I think it's a decent deck. It will definitely not be for everyone. It's really requires a lot of practice and a lot of knowledge to play him, but at least what I've been seeing, it can perform on a really decent level versus most of the meta. And I will be I will put him in B tier.
I feel like he's C tier, top of C tier. I don't think he should.
I think top of C tier is if you are putting Han Yellow in the B tier, he is definitely a C tier deck. But it's still you can win even a big tournament with him. And leaders like Luke are a good leaders to master, because you will always have an advantage that your opponent don't really have much practice versus your deck. And for example, a lot of people forget that he can give a shield and play really badly into that. So he's a leader that can really surprise your opponents in a good way for you.
Yeah, okay. Also, looks like Saber is sometimes a card that can win the game.
That card is really, really good in this deck. Okay, so Sabine Yellow or Sabine Space.
Yeah, okay. Maybe you can talk about Sabine.
Yeah, I've played versus this deck in TTI. I lost to it as Tarkin,
Yeah.
but even though I lost, I still think this deck is not really great. I think if you can play Sabine green, there is not really a reason to play Sabine yellow. This deck is worse on every single aspect of the game, and mostly because of that, I don't really see why you would play her. So for me, she's one of the leaders that should be avoided with Cunning, just because you if you are playing Sabine, just play the better version of her and play green. So
I
I
mean,
for me, yeah,
Yellow Sabine definitely has a good space, like better Sabine than green one because of Falcon, the new one and the old one. Also, the turn code is pretty good in Sabine Yellow, but on average, I would say the green version is still better.
so I don't really compare those two decks. I think green is so much better. Like in set one, they were similar because you could have played you had 5 HP more. Yellow had a decent matchup versus green, but I think in set two she lost a lot, and for me it's at bottom of C tier.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not bottom, but slightly, it's something in the middle. Like I would put her above Vader,
Yeah, I think this
maybe
is
also
as
above Chirrut.
she would never win versus Triot.
I mean, okay, whatever.
Yeah, I can put her above it, but it was just fun. Okay, so we talked about yellow hand, so let's talk about a green one. These decks are really similar. Uh, and before the set, I would say that for me, green was better. But I think they have the same strengths and weaknesses. They play really similar, and I actually think Yellow Han has a little bit better matchup versus the harder decks for him. So for me, he's almost it's almost the same deck, that just yellow is a little bit stronger. So I would put them next to each other.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I would say that green Han is better. I would even say that he's in bottom of A tier because of how good late game he is now. He has so
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
that's at least what
I
I've been seeing. Like,
I don't really mind putting him in like A tier. If you think he's better than yellow, then I can agree. I think
it's not
they
that
are really
by
similar.
much, but I would say he's better.
Okay.
Like, I guess you can put him on top of B tier if you want.
Okay. I think it will be a little bit better for me. Okay, so let's talk about the deck that is the biggest disappointment for us. So a green Boba.
Yeah, so at first we're trying to build a green Boba, but basically the only two cards that he got in this set are Maul and Boba Fett's armor. Like there is Forlom, but Forlom isn't even that great in green Boba because you run ramp in this deck, so a lot
Yeah.
of times you want to skip the 4 resource play. So this deck didn't really get that much support in this set, so that's why he is not that high and yellow version is better.
Yeah, yellow is much better, and I think bottom of B tier is even a little bit high for me for Green Boba. He is basically
I mean,
the same deck that was in the set one, but every other deck got much stronger. So because of how strong other Bobas are, I'm not really. I don't really like the green version in the set. So it will for me it will be somewhere in B tier, but I can put him on the bottom just because of how disappointing he was.
yeah, I mean you can put him on top on bottom of B tier or top of C tier,
Yeah,
whatever you want.
I think even I you know what, top of C tier, it's I think it's the place
Yeah,
for
sure.
him.
I feel
And
kind of bad for Sabine. I feel like she's kind of stronger, but
then he's definitely not stronger than Boba.
okay, maybe okay. Let's leave her there.
Yeah. If you are putting Boba Green here, I think Sabine behind him is fine. And I think Luke is also because of the element of surprise you get with Luke. I think he will perform better than Sabine Yellow. Yeah, and
I mean,
yeah, and
we don't have to agree on everything.
yeah,
So
okay. And for those who don't know, for the set one we played only Boba Green. All the showdowns we won was with Boba Green. So for us, putting him really low, it says a lot of how much we were disappointed in his performance.
yeah, I mean, I basically almost sold all of the cards that I were running in Green Boba already.
Yeah,
All of the
okay, so
legendaries.
let's talk about the deck that we will definitely disagree on. So Red Ray. And I will let you talk about her because you
Okay,
know what I
so
think.
yeah, so before Beton absolutely crushes Ray, I can say that Ray is not that bad. Like she has quite a few good plays. She has the Force Throw, and now she has quite a good discard package. So Pillage and K2 discard is pretty good with her. And if you run to more mid-range matchup or sometimes even control, those discards can really help you. Also, she has Restore, but she struggles sometimes against aggro because she deploys at 6, and also her early game units a lot of the times are not enough to stop the aggro, I would say. Like, I
Okay.
guess you can give the experience token to your units, but it's also times not enough to really withstand the aggro.
Okay. I totally agree. But I know this deck will be a part of meta. I know a lot of people like this deck. But for me, she is much weaker than Chirrut was in set 1. Because,
Chirrut Red.
yeah, Chirrut Red. Because Chirrut Red actually had a decent matchup versus the strongest decks in the meta. So she was competitive when you played with Boba Green, with Krennic, and Ray, she just gets obliterated by top decks. I think every deck that is an S and A tier is like having like a 70% win rate versus her. And yeah, versus the other decks she performs okay, but because of how terrible her win rate is versus the top decks, I think she should be on the C tier, but I will let Sip place her.
I mean, I guess we can put her in sitter just below Sabine.
Yeah, okay. Because for me, if I would be placing her alone, she would be right next to Kylo Ren. Here. But but yeah, I will totally accept a place in C tier. Okay, so now let's talk about a Daring Crane Red Boba. And this is a deck that is really hard to evaluate, just because this deck doesn't really play with your opponent. It's a deck that if you have a good draw, it's almost impossible to lose. And if you don't, it's almost impossible to win. So this is the deck that basically plays different game. You go to play Star Wars, your opponent brings the Red Boba, and he plays a single player game that if he drew well, he wins, if he drew poorly, he loses. And there is nothing really you can do about it. And
Yeah, so basically Red Boba plays already had lane to space and is oriented about triple dark raid. Yeah, so he's similar in Tarkin in that matter, but he is way more oriented about playing space units and utilizing cards like Outmaneuver to just win the race with the opponent.
Yeah. And for me, like Tarkin at least has an ability to play on the ground. So it have a little bit of like ways to play. And Boba Red is just space, 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 go face, space, go face, outmaneuver, finish the game. And I really hate playing this deck. I really hate playing against this deck because I like my games to be interactive. But I can't really say that this is a bad deck. It has really decent win rate versus almost anything. So
yeah, that's unfortunate.
I think I will put him in B tier.
Yeah, B tier is
I
nice.
think he's still better than play hard control, but I will not put him higher just because it's not really. You're no longer playing Star Wars Unlimited if you play this deck.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel like the spot where you put him is perfectly fine for him.
Okay, so now let's talk about the two decks that are really similar, and I think we can talk about them together. So it's Jabba Cunning and Palpatine Cunning. And so both leaders develop really late. You try to control, and you try to, when your leader deploys, swing the game back into your favor and just finish it in the next few turns. And those decks got really big power up. Of course, Jabba is a new leader, but it plays really similar to Palpatine with his capture and with Drayden Voss combo. And Palpatine got much stronger in this set, and I think both of the decks are competitive. As of this moment, I think Palpatine Yellow has a little bit more refined list and performs a little bit better. But I think if someone will put a lot of effort and finally get 50 cards together for Jabba, it will be on the same power level as Palpatine. And for me, those decks will be like in the mid to high B tier at the moment.
Yeah. So basically, for Jabba, he has some really strong early gameplay. So both hunters are really strong with Jabba. Also, he has a good top end, so Maul and Rancor. But with Jabba, the problem is the middle game. So like 5-6 resources are quite tough to do well with Jabba. Like there are not that many good cards that work well with him. So yeah, it's still he's not that high, but he requires at least someone to put enough time into him to really develop a strong list. Palpatine is like slightly more refined because he was in set 1 already, so people were playing already him there, and he got stuff like Evacuate and some good cards. But I am not also sure whether I would put him them that high. I feel like Red Boba is slightly higher because yeah.
I think they are better than hard controls. They play in a little bit similar fashion, and I can see a future where Palpatine on Jabba are in S tier. If someone puts like a perfect list and the meta is really well put to support it, it can be one of the most powerful decks. But I think as of this moment, and B tier is like a perfect place for them.
Yeah, I mean, I am not seeing them being in S tier, but okay, I guess we can move on.
Yeah, okay. So if we talked about those decks, I think we also should talk about for me, a better version of them. So double green Palpatine. This deck not only performs really well in tournaments, it's also is really fun to play. It has a few big weaknesses, but because of how strong his like flip turn is, and because you now have access to more ramp and more cards to play with Vader, because the additional sentinels really help to prolong the game. I think it's the deck that for me should be in A tier, and for me it's high on A tier, but
yeah. Okay, so the thing that carries really Palpatine green in this set is the Luckies, so the 5/5 unit for 4, because you can play them on 4 resources and then play Barrage, and that can really stop the opponent from killing you, like the aggro mainly. So that's a really strong play that you can do against them. And also you have still the ramp that makes you a strong late game deck. So Palpatine green is definitely a strong deck. Personally, I haven't played a single game against this deck so far, so I'm not quite sure how good he is. I would say that he's not as strong as Tarkin and Bossk. He's an A tier deck, but I wouldn't call him that high.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like we can keep him on bottom of A tier, maybe top of B tier, something like that.
I think for me he has a lot of unique plays that are a little bit more versatile than the B tier decks. So I can agree that to put him in the bottom of A tier. Okay, so let's talk about the new Han, the young Han, but the red version, the more aggro version. So this is the deck that is similar, because I think we can talk about Red Sabine and Red Han in the same way. I think
sure.
They both suffer from the same issue, that they are just a worse version than a green Sabine or green Han. Those decks are really strong. They can definitely win tournaments and can perform really well. But on the other hand, if you're playing Han or Sabine, just play the green. Those versions are better. And aggression and rancor and Bo-Katan doesn't really give you enough to recover from losing ECL and Maz and all the green stuff that you want.
Yeah, basically, like you're gaining the like Bo-Katan and Rancor, but if you play green, you have Battlefield Marine, which is pretty similar to Bo-Katan.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess you get the Rancor, but losing ECL and all of the other good green cards is not enough to justify playing this color. You get also Tarkin Town, which is pretty strong, but yeah, I would say the green versions are just better than them.
But I still think they are both of them are A tier decks.
I don't know if they are A tier or top of B tier. When I'm looking at this list, I feel like maybe we can put Han higher, the all Han, so green and yellow maybe in A tier.
Okay.
And yeah, I feel like now we are good. So
I actually, when I'm looking at this list, I agree that this looks cleaner. So okay, so we have two decks to talk about. Let's leave Han for the last deck and let's talk about Kira Green. So yeah, you can start.
So Kira is basically the Shadows of the Galaxy version of Krennic. So it's pretty similar deck. So a control-y as soft control. So they're not as much oriented around removal as the item blue, item yellow, Boba blue, stuff like that. They have way more units and wants to ramp to those units and then finish the game with big stuff like Avengers, Snoke, and all those things. So the reason why we have Kira and Krennic is missing is because Kira has a better early game. So she has the Enforcer, the guy who is a 3-2 with shielded, and he can really help you to play against aggro. And the main reason to play Kira, like this guy is just such a powerhouse that it makes Kira a strong leader for
There
sure.
is also the 5 mana 4/4 shielded Sentinel that
sure.
plays really well with Kira, and because of that, I think she is a pretty strong leader. Because she is one of the leaders that has really strong aggro, like really strong early game. Her mid game is a little bit lacking, but she still has access to ECL with Husk, so you still can abuse the ECL in the mid game, and in the later stages of the game you have Snook that is just, if you play Snook, almost every aggro just loses, because they don't really have a way to remove him. So for me, she is one of the A tier decks, but I'm not really sure where to put her in A tier.
I would say below Bossk. That's where
I think it's a really great place for her. I can say it with 100% like humility that I thought she will be the worst leader in the game. It was before they showed Afra, but yeah, her flip turn really surprised me. The fact that you can, if the opponent leader also develops on 5, you can just play her, and she will trade with almost any leader in the game, which is really good in those colors. So, and her ability is extremely strong. So if you kill kill enemy leader with your leader and your ability is stronger, it's a really good play. So that's why she's so high.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of the same for me in terms of underrating Kira, so I have to admit that when I first saw her, I called her a worse version of IG, and I was really wrong about that, because I said that IG has a 5-4 stat line and she's a 4-4, so that's a worse version, but the fact that you play her with green makes her quite strong, because the reason why I wasn't really high on her was because I thought that the opponent can just not deploy the leader at all, and if you both don't deploy, then maybe you have to deploy Kira to do something, and then they can deploy their leader. So she doesn't hit the leader in those cases. But because you play her with green, in most cases you have a better late game. So you're pretty fine in cases where the opponent doesn't want to deploy. So you can just both don't deploy leaders and you're in pretty good situation. Also, I kind of wasn't aware that there is the guy one force grid unit that can get a shield token, and those things makes Kira really strong that I kind of underrated at first.
Okay, and lastly, and definitely not the weakest, the green Han, new Han, or white Han as we call them. For me, and I think for Sleep as well, it's by far the best deck in the meta. And I think there's like 3 things that make him the strongest. First, like those colors are extremely strong. Heroic, aggression, God. I think 3 best cards in the set that were added are Cassian, Poe, and Wrecker.
Yeah, exactly.
And and they work extremely well together. So now you need to choose what leader is best in those color, and it's Sabine and Han. And for me, Han is more versatile than Sabine. You can play Han with many different approaches. Most of them are okay to good, and the list that we've created has such an amazing matchup versus most of the decks. It's really hard to stop. It has turn 1 that not a single deck in the game can compete. And even our list, it's constantly evolving. It will be really easy to adapt the deck to the current meta. So for me, this deck is absurdly strong, and if we would create an additional tier, I would put Han Green in S+.
Yeah, so I mean, Han is definitely really strong because, first of all, as you mentioned, there are so many powerful cards that he got in this set. And also the fact that you get so much flexibility with Han is a great thing, because you can play more aggressively by using his ability and playing some high power units quicker. So you can play K2 on 3 resources, maybe Poe on 4 resources, just to get more tempo on the field, or you can play more for the late game with just sideboard and maybe playing stuff like Create Dragon, Home Ones, maybe Mothmas, and play for late game. So you get so many options when playing Han, and also it's really hard to get screwed by the bad draw with Han, because you still get the option to use the Han's ability in order to fix your curve. So the play that Beton was referring to, I believe, at the start was playing Mass and 2 1-drops at the first round. So basically Mass is a 3/3 unit, and also you get 2 more 1-drops, so R2 and Reckless Gunslinger, or the Clone Deserter.
But you can also play her with Renegade, so Mass will be 2/2. And just because Han, the fixing of mana means that you will almost never not use all of your mana. The longer the game goes, you will see how much benefit using all of your mana provides. And even cards from the set 1 that was underwhelming, like Mon Mothma, in this deck is incredibly strong, because Mon Mothma for 1 mana is just a body on the board will search you a card that can answer what your opponent is playing. And the more we play this deck, and the more we adapt it, and the more we like looking for answers how to play against what is currently the strongest. It's like, oh yeah, we have a bad matchup versus so and so. Yeah, just add those two cards and we win almost every time. And this deck can counter almost every single deck in the game. And there is definitely a deck that can beat it, but the decks that beat Han consistently are on C tier. So and they are not many people play them. So for us, I think this is the list that we will be releasing. If any of the leaders you love is missing, tell us in the comments. I will try to answer every single one. And
explain us why we are so wrong about Kylo being in the tier that he is.
Yeah, and we may miss something, and if there is like a leader that is not here, and if you post a comment with just saying, okay, what about wait a second, what leader are we missing? So what about, I don't know, Bo-Katan? Oh, what about IG Red? I will rate every single one of those. I can already say IG will be in like a tier below, not competitive.
It'll be Afra.
Yeah, Afra will be, I don't know, in the garbage. That's the place you should put this leader. So yeah, and sadly, this is the leader that I got a showcase for. So yeah.
You got a showcase.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I think we can wrap up here.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody, and see you in the next video. Bye.
Yeah.